Hey y'all, this is part two of the article "A Mississippi Doctor Comes Home," an article in the Saturday Evening Post in 1961, written by Hodding Carter, editor and publisher of the Greenville, Mississippi Delta Democrat Times. I would not want it, though, that the only times that I saw Matthew were when he was about to take another important step, or that we talked only of his immediate requirements. As he grew older and his horizons widened, and he became more and more sure of himself, the development of his mind fascinated me. We would talk of many things, of the common problems that beset his people and mine, of what was happening in a world concerning whose upheavals he had a sensitive grasp, of why he did and did not want to come back to Greenville one day. I especially remember one of his later recollections while he was in the Air Force that is illustrative of so much. In their high school days, he and four friends had toured the until then unknown North one summer in a wheezy jalopy. They were, Matthew said, matter of factly, the best students in the school. All planned to go to college and then return to Greenville. All of them did go to college, but the others are up north, three with academic doctor's degrees, and one a highly placed civil servant. But always with Matthew and me, that degree of Doctor of Medicine was uppermost in our minds. After Matthew was graduated from Meharry, he participated in what is called the intern matching program. Under it, a medical school graduate selects several hospitals that qualify for an internship program. He makes applications to these hospitals. When he has completed his applications, he rates them in the order of his choice. The hospitals which receive applications from medical school graduates also rate the applicants as to their desirability. The graduate is appointed to the hospital which he has rated the highest or nearest to it, and which also rates him relatively high. Matthew was matched with the George W. Hubbard Hospital in Nashville, which is associated with Meharry. At the end of a year of internship at Hubbard Hospital, where he specialized in pediatrics, young Dr. Page was faced with a decision. In good health and without prior military service, he was eligible for the draft. As an alternative, he could become a medical officer in one of the armed services. He decided upon entering the Air Force Medical Corps, and during his internship was commissioned in the Air Force Reserve. When he came home after his year as an intern, he told me that he had requested that he be called into the service as soon as possible. And so he was in September of 1957 as a captain in the Air Force Medical Corps. I did not learn all that began almost immediately afterward until Matthew was home again for keeps. After entering upon active service that September, he attended for 3 short dazed weeks a medical officer indoctrination course at Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. Then he was assigned to Ernest Harmon Air Force Base in Newfoundland, and there Captain Matthew Page, fresh out of his internship in a Negro hospital in Nashville, was appointed chief of the pediatric service in the 100-bed hospital, whose staff ranged from 10 to 16 doctors. In addition, because of his interests in obstetrics and gynecology, he was made assistant in this division. He spent 2 years at Harmon Air Force Base, and in his last year, he was appointed chief of the obstetrical and gynecological service, a position he held until he was rotated home in 1959. That tour of duty in Newfoundland meant everything to me, Dr. Page says now. First of all, the experience that the assignment gave me could not have been gained in 3 times as many years elsewhere. And it was important to me personally that I came in contact with people about whom I'd only read. He meant white people. And it cleared up a lot of things in my mind simply by talking with them. To his knowledge, he was the first Negro doctor to be stationed at Harmon. He says that he had felt some personal apprehension about being there and about the work he was assigned to do, and that there were a few minor incidents in the beginning, but I'm happy to say that none of my fears ever materialized, Matthew told me. After a few weeks, I got the impression that I was just as welcome and appreciated as any other doctor on the staff. For the most part, I was treated very, very well, and I had no trouble at all as far as my work was concerned. Captain Page delivered more than 150 babies while chief of the obstetrical and gynecological division, and he didn't lose one that came to full term. He was so happy with the life and associations as a medical officer in the Air Force that he seriously considered staying in the service. As an alternative, he also thought of accepting an offer from a small town in Iowa, which came in the last year of service. Lacking a doctor, the community offered to build a clinic to his specifications free of charge and a $20,000 home on which he would only have to pay 2% interest beginning the fourth year. There were other similar opportunities too. Under the terms of his scholarship grant, he did not have to return to Mississippi if he chose to, instead to repay the $5,000 loan. But Matthew Page decided to come home. One reason was my feeling that I had obligated myself to the state by taking the scholarship, even though I could have gotten out of it by repaying the loan, Matthew says. The second reason was another more or less moral obligation. During my college and medical school days, I promised a good many people and groups that I would return to Mississippi, specifically to my own hometown. It wasn't a matter so much of making a living, but of what contribution I could make to the area in which I would practice. Mississippi has many, many needs. There is so much that can be done that is not done yet in our state, and this is true especially among my own people. Maybe it's because I used to be a scout leader, but I'm most interested of all in the young folks who have not yet finished high school. I would like to do as much as possible to help channel their minds into productive directions. It's productiveness that can make them better Mississippians and better Americans. From some people, this kind of comment might corny. It isn't when you hear it from Matthew Page. So my friend came home in October of 1959. When he called at my office, he was still in uniform, for his period of service would not end for a few more weeks. He told me that he had just rented a small building on Clay Street for his offices and that he planned to marry a Tougaloo classmate, a prospective member of the Coleman High School faculty, as soon as his practice got underway. Then he told me the big secret. He was to receive a commendation medal from the Air Force, and it would be given to him on the occasion of the next of the periodic wing reviews, which are held at the base in conjunction with the graduation ceremonies for the cadets who take basic training there. He asked me to attend. I promised him that my wife and I would be there. I also suggested that before he'd even had his office swept out, he ought to go to the courthouse and register as a voter. He did that very day, and the registrar told us later that he had never had a more comprehensive set of answers to the questions in the voter qualification test, which in our county is administered fairly regardless of race. It is unlikely that my wife and I, or any others with the knowledge of what lay behind the event, will forget that November morning when Captain Matthew Page received his commendation medal. On the parade ground behind him, the airmen and cadets of the Greenville Air Force Base stood at attention. Directly before him were the commanding officers and his staff. In the stands behind the officers waited the parents and other relatives of cadets, a few other interested white persons, and a cluster of Negroes, among them John Page, who had been seasonably occupied as a leveling machine operator for the United States Engineers for 25 years. His wife, Mrs. Molly Page, who cooks, and the attractive young Negro woman whose name was then Vivian Patton, daughter of a Tougaloo carpenter and herself a teacher-to-be in Greenville, who would become Dr. Page's wife the next spring. I have purposely saved the text of the Air Force citation until nearly the end of this story. This is what Colonel Jasper Bell, commanding officer of the Greenville Air Force Base, read into the microphone so that all present could hear and others later could read. Citation to accompany the award of the Air Force Commendation Medal to Matthew J. Page. Captain Matthew J. Page distinguished himself by meritorious service as Chief of the Pediatric Service and later as Chief of the Obstetrics and Gynecology Service, Harmon Air Force Base, from 15 October 1957 to 6 July 1959. During this period, he gained outstanding recognition and respect from his patients and fellow physicians, demonstrating tact, patience, and concern in his relationship with patients and instilling in them a feeling of confidence and trust. Through his diligent study and exceptional application, he was able to solve all problem cases encountered during this period with a knowledge and technique far above that which would normally be expected of a physician of Captain Page's training and experience. For his exemplary devotion to duty and untiring efforts, he has reflected great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. When it was over and the base squadrons began to pass in review, the Johnny Little Greenville Air Force Band swung into When the Saints Go Marching In. Under her breath, my wife said, "Hallelujah," and not to be funny. I couldn't think of anything by way of answer. I was looking at Captain Matthew Page's mother and father and fiance a couple of rows over, and I don't think that could have said anything either. I have talked with Greenville's newest doctor perhaps a dozen times since he opened his practice, and on a variety of subjects, sometimes in his office, sometimes in mine, or in my home. From a variety of sources, I have learned that Dr. Matthew Page is doing well in the community, which is served by some 40 white doctors who treat anybody and 4 other and older Negro doctors who treat Negroes. As one friend of his father's put it, that boy's sure spreading himself out. They're even coming in from across the river in Arkansas and Louisiana. And neighboring planters and other white employers of Negroes have also told me that they and their employees are more than satisfied with his services. Matthew himself is optimistic, and if he is not entirely happy, I suspect that he is happier than he expected to be. I can only describe my reception in Greenville as being very cordial and helpful, he told me near summer's end. I've received much help from members of both races. I've been especially surprised at the treatment which I have received from the white doctors of Greenville. It is 200 to 300% more than my original expectation. What is surprising to some of my friends elsewhere is the fact that, like other qualified Negro physicians here, I am eligible to be and am a member of the staff of the General Hospital. A Negro doctor can admit his patients to the hospital and treat them there. To my knowledge, within whatever limitations he may have, he can do whatever he is qualified to do. As far as the hospital privileges are concerned, I have general practice privileges along with minor surgery privileges. This is the extent of my professional education and capabilities now. After a year, Matthew says that returning home and staying has not been the easiest decision he ever made. I have been so busy getting my practice established that I haven't had too much time to think about anything else, he said. However, work is just a part of living, and having just left a different set of conditions in the Air Force and elsewhere, the adjustment hasn't been too easy. The biggest question that I keep asking myself is what I want to do as a person. For a short answer, I can only say that I want to be a full American citizen. I would like to be able to enjoy the privileges that full citizenship gives. I also want to share the responsibilities that citizenship demands. He said that he has found his life away from work restricted and, in a sense, repressive. I like to play golf when I have time, to bowl, and to go to some decent place for dinner, to take part in civic events, but there's not much opportunity, he says, not morbidly or with rancor, but as a plain matter of fact. But at the Greenville Air Force Base, as a reserve officer, I can play golf and bowl and be a member of the Officers Club, and that does make a lot of difference. Not that I've had much time to do very much besides work and settle down. Most of his energy outside of his practice goes into working with young Negroes. He meets often with gatherings of young people, some of whom are still in high school and some in college, and he feels that he has given them something out of his own experience that they can use in becoming better citizens. He is also turning again to a boyhood love of hunting and fishing. Will he stay in Greenville for as far ahead as he can see? He is not too sure, but just now it seems likely. He is aware that he is in the unusual and useful position of being a medical and social missionary in his own land and among his own people, and that he can spend a lifetime here without running out of something needful to do. As for myself, looking back upon these 13 years, I cannot help but think of one aspect which Dr. Matthew Page, in his zeal to help his people, and because of those frustrations which today are still inevitable, may overlook. Tougaloo, the college which Matthew attended, arose out of the determination of men and women of different races to bring light to the darkness of ignorance. And the white instructors who helped teach Matthew Page at Tougaloo are not unaware of stigma and ostracism. The medical scholarship which Matthew Page won on merit was established by the legislature of a state which white men completely dominate. Out of the battlefield dream of a northern and southern white man and the lasting gratitude of another white southerner was born Meharry, the medical school from which he graduated. The good humored and thoughtful response of a railroad president most certainly smoothed his path through that medical school, and as he readily says, the helping hands which have been extended since he returned home have been both white skinned and dark. We are not entirely islands of black and white.